Hey everyone, PushingUpRoses here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a new indie adventure game called the Charnel House Trilogy, developed by Owl Cave Games. Hopefully this review will be as spoiler-free as possible. It's a relatively short game, so I want to make sure I touch on things I find interesting. Thus I'll give a mild spoilers warning. Otherwise I'd just be sitting here saying whether the game was good or bad, and that would make for an astonishingly boring review, so I'll try to say as much as I can without spilling too many beans. There are 3 parts to this game, as you probably figured out on your own from the title. Trilogy. It means a group of 3. Also, I see I misspelled trilogy in the script I'm reading off of right now as trilology. Good job, me. You can also determine almost immediately that the game is likely going to be dark in nature. Why, you ask? Well, a charnel house is a location where human remains are stored, so yeah, not exactly picking up a bubbly plot here. In the first part, you play as Alex Davenport, a Daria-esque sounding character in her mid to late 20s. She has a bit of an alternative look and a snarky nature, somewhat troubled, and she kind of reminds me of someone I know really well. I'm sure it'll come to me. There really isn't an intro, you're pretty much thrown into the game rather abruptly. I look at the first part of the game as a prologue of sorts, where we're getting a sense of the character and where things might be going. I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure Alex has an ex-boyfriend named Gavin.
Gavin's old coat. It's been here since, well, the night he left, I guess. Gavin won this for me in one of those claw machines. I bought this for Gavin. Ugh.
Just a hunch. You then switch to a different character in the second part named Dr. Lang, whom you'll come to understand has a very specific link to Alex, and then continue to play her in the final act. The narrative focuses on these 2 characters as they share a journey on what I can only describe as an infernal train named Gloria.
2 passengers. Well, this is my lucky day. It's freezing out here. You guys got on board old Gloria now. She's nice and warm.
The game was made in Adventure Game Studio, and aesthetically, I really enjoy it. There's something very familiar and cozy about it for me, being someone who grew up on point-and-click adventure games. It reminds me very much of the Trilby series, which makes sense since that was also done in AGS, and story-wise, well, I describe this game as a sanitarium-like Psychosis mixed with a Stephen King storyline and sprinkled with horror tropes and some social commentary, all of which I really like.
Aye, I reckon so.
It's like a horror game stew of things I'm interested in, except stews often have potatoes in them. I think the writing is very strong and gets better, albeit a lot heavier, the further you get into the game. I do feel as though it dragged on in the first part, but it does a fantastic job setting the atmosphere and tone for the rest of the game. You know what really gets me? Startle scares. No, not jump scares, startle scares. Cleverly placed bits of creepy, utilized in such a way that it makes me want to say, screw you, game! Screw you! The game does this very early on with a few thunderclap moments, and then I kept thinking to myself, well shit, the whole game is gonna be like this. Now I feel tense and must stay away from doors. But in what I think is an incredibly wise move, the game has virtually 0 startles after the initial one I experienced. So basically, I was on edge the entire time and was really feeling those creepy vibes. But seriously, screw you, game. The voice acting is overall pretty strong.
Good evening, my friend. I was wondering if you could...
Ah, yes. I've seen you poking around. Having trouble settling down, are we?
Something like that. Could do with a stiff drink about now?
I found it to be more natural sounding than other PC games from the past. It is so natural sounding, in fact, that sometimes it teetered on boring, but it did get stronger as the game's story got heavier. YouTube producer Jim Sterling plays a huge role in this game, and I thought his performance was, and I mean this in the best possible way, unnerving.
I've been watching over you all the time, and now the worm wants to eat my eyes. Stop me watching.
But because I was so familiar with his work, I sometimes felt I was watching a demonic episode of the Jimquisition.
I came in and watched you sleep.
I really appreciate the horror themes in this game. I appreciate them a lot. There's a moment where you're playing as Dr. Lang and you end up having a drink at the bar, and that entire scene with all of that dialogue was so reminiscent of Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining. I got a sense of frenzy in that part, the same way I felt when I watched Jack Torrance go utterly crackers as he vents his frustration to the ghost bartender.
Goddamn, Floyd, you always were a preachy son of a bitch, weren't you?
I think you're quite mistaken, Mr. Lang. We've never met, you and I. I just don't want you to do yourself an injury.
I can handle one more goddamn drink, you stupid bitch.
And the music score is appropriately hair-raising in some parts. Sometimes the music will become more menacing, as if to lead up to something crazy, but then drops off unexpectedly, which also reminded me of The Shining. Ah yes, and a scary game would not be complete without the inclusion of a creepy child. Here, have some cigarettes, kid.
I am not giving cigarettes to a child.
Oh, I didn't think that would work. Oops. There are some geeky pop culture references throughout the game, which I always appreciate, and the achievements were pretty amusing. The puzzles are very, very linear. There was not a moment where I was stuck for very long, but I liked that the puzzle design made complete sense to the story, and I never felt that it was unfair. In fact, being that I'm a Sierra adventure game purist of sorts, I wouldn't have minded more of a challenge. I think the best thing about this game is the writing and the hard-hitting themes of the story, though. It's difficult not to go into more detail, but to avoid spoilers, I will say that this has some very disturbing parts. In that regard, I compare it to the game I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. There's a part in that game that addresses a character's experience with rape, and I remember going through that entire sequence with the hair on my arms raised. I can say the same thing about the Charnel House in certain areas of the game, where it just seems so majorly fucked up I can feel it in the pit of my stomach. I think it's hard to get those feelings across and handle heavy themes in a mature manner, so I say props to the writer. My emotions were definitely provoked, particularly from the middle until the end of the third part. This is not a happy or humorous adventure game in any way whatsoever, but my guess is that if you're here on my channel and you have some interest in story-driven adventure games with a dark focus, a lot of you already might have this game. For those who don't, it's a really morbid experience that I think is worth playing despite the slow beginnings and sometimes repetitive voice acting. It looks like there will be a sequel coming out in 2016, and based on my enjoyment level for this game, I'll probably go ahead and buy it when it comes out. This isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but if you are an introspective, morbid, theme-loving person like I am, then this is worth a play. It took me a little bit over 2 hours to complete. If not, this might not be what you're looking for, but hopefully your curiosity is sufficiently piqued.
Good work, lass. Must have given my matches to that funny fella in 2B. He likes to play with fire, so he does.
Well, that sounds astonishingly unsafe.
It's alright. I told him to be on his best behaviour. It's not every day we have guests.
This is a passenger train.
Is it?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching my review of the Charnel House Trilogy. Hope you enjoyed it. So, who wants to watch The Shining? Cause I know I do. If you want to see more of my reviews on games in a similar vein, there's a link to I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream above in the annotations. If you want to prod me about stuff and things, all of my social networks are there for your mouse-clicking enjoyment. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.